Welcome to Finally Python and Jupyter for True Newbies Lesson 2. In this lesson, we're going to learn some key Jupyter terms so that it's easy for you to get around in your notebooks. We're going to run some basic math commands using the Python language. We're going to combine math and words using Python. And then we're going to cover just a few coding terms that are used in nearly all coding languages, not just Python. When the last lesson ended, we had just run our first line of Python code in our first ever Jupyter notebook. If you still have that notebook open, just sit tight. We're going to remind the people who close their notebooks how to get their notebook back open. Remember that if you're on Windows, you find the Anaconda 3 installation, and from the choices listed, choose Anaconda Navigator. Once Anaconda Navigator is open, you'll be on the home page. You look for the Jupyter Notebook tile and you click on the blue launch button. Jupyter opens in your web browser, something like Chrome. You're going to locate your My Jupyter Notebooks folder. You're going to drill into that and find your notebook that's called First Notebook, and then you're going to click on First Notebook and it'll open in a second browser tab. You already know what a notebook is. Within the body of a notebook, you have what are called cells. An active cell has a blue sidebar, and it's the cell that will run when you click the Run button. A cell can not only be active, it can also be in edit mode. When you click your cursor down into a cell, the cell will have a green sidebar that indicates that you're in edit mode. When the code inside a cell has been run, a number will appear inside a set of brackets. That number is referred to as the index. If the cell returned a value, the value is called the output. If I run the same command over and over again, the index number will change each time the command is run. If I want to reset the index counter, I can reset the kernel and clear the output. The index number in the brackets will disappear, and so will the output. So let's take a second to consider that command. We went to the kernel menu and we chose Restart and Clear Output. Our cell went from looking something like this to looking like this, and it had something to do with corn. In the English language, a single piece of corn, whether it's fresh or popped, is called a kernel. But when it comes to coding, a kernel is a piece of code that's like a seed. It's small, rich, and it's a self-contained little powerhouse. So when you think of the kernel that's running in your notebook, think of it as a little engine. Every time you have a notebook open that's running commands, you must have a kernel that is behind the scenes processing those commands. If you have more than one notebook running at a time, each one will have its own kernel. So we just covered 7 key terms, and we need those to move forward so we can talk about the things we do within a notebook. Look over this list. If you're unclear or you didn't catch the meaning of any of these, go back and watch the first section again. Now we're going to move on. We're going to write some more Python, and the Python that we write is going to be basic math. So for these next 4 math commands, you're going to follow the same sequence. You'll start by clicking in a cell, which will activate it and get it into edit mode. You'll type a command and then you'll click the Run button. So for this first one, we'll type a comment. We'll put a pound sign and then a little note about what we're doing, which is addition in this case. And then we'll type 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3, and then we'll hit the Run button and we'll see the output is the answer. And then we just repeat this process. We'll do 4 equations, first with a comment, then the equation, then we hit run, then we look at the results. By the end, we have 4 equations, one for addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. So by now you've done 2 types of commands. You did that first command in the first lesson with hello world, and then you did 4 commands just now using basic math. Now we're going to combine the first print command and the set of math commands. In a lot of coding languages, words are called strings. When we wrote our first line of Python during the first lesson, we used the string hello world with the print command. We could have broken our message into parts like this, and then the print command would have known to concatenate them, which means to combine them back together. Take a look at these examples that combine or concatenate strings and math equations into output, and then try a few on your own. Now let's look at one of the examples more in depth. Notice that in this command we have 36/3 appearing twice. The first time it appears we have it in quotes, and so Jupyter shows it in red. That means that Jupyter considers it to be a string. The second time it appears, it's green and purple. The numbers are green and the division symbol is purple. That means Jupyter considers it an equation. Finally, notice how the two come out differently in the output. The reason that you've got the same equation coming out differently is because the first 36/3 is being treated as a string, and the second 36/3 is being treated as an equation made up of numbers and a division symbol. Division symbol will actually be called an operator. All the math symbols are called operators. So that wraps up lesson 2. Remember, we started with some key Jupyter terms: notebook, cell, active cell, index, output, those terms. Then we ran some basic math commands. Then we combined math and words together in some commands. And through that, we learned some coding terms, like concatenate means to combine. And we learned about data types like string and number. And then we learned that all the math symbols are called operators.